Good morning, America. That felt like it was an apt greeting. Actually, this is releasing in the evening, so I guess it's not good morning, America.
It's going to release in the afternoon.
Good afternoon, America.
Yeah. Maybe even in late morning. No.
Wow.
Well, it depends.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, America. We have a special episode of the Dear Church podcast for you this Wednesday, November the 6th, because we wanted to talk about the election and we wanted to talk about the results. We wanted to talk about the backlash. We wanted to talk about some of the things that are coming out of the woodworks, camera gate from the Kamala camp. I thought that was an interesting one. So we wanted to talk about this election, the results, and some ways that we as Christians can now pray for Mr. 4547. Whoa. We'll be talking about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris this morning. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Afternoon. Getting my times mixed up right now because I'm so excited.
You are excited.
Yes. Should I do the little thing?
Little thing.
Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang, and we have with us Pastor Gene and the entire crew. Today, like we mentioned in the introduction, we're going to be talking about this election and Mr. 47. DJT, as I like
You
to.
are so excited. I've never seen you excited.
I'm
like
not
this.
excited. I have to say, I'm not excited.
Something really bad happened to me this morning, though. I was walking out of my house, and someone clubbed me over the head and said, "This is MAGA country," and put on Trump socks on my feet. So I came to the office. I had to take off the Trump socks. Can we show it for the camera? The Trump socks? It was crazy.
She's like finally making an appearance. He hasn't. Oh no!
Yeah, these are the Trump socks.
Those are pretty amazing.
What happened to Justice Smollett?
That's pretty great. But I guess, the question that we want to address this morning is now what? Donald Trump has, and not everything is counted 100%, right? It seems that it is most probable that.
Yeah, there's just no path to victory for
right.
the Democrat Party.
That Donald Trump will be the 47th president of these United States. I know that there might be not legislation. There might be lawsuits and stuff like that, legal action that's taken by the Kamala team. We're not sure. But it would seem that Mr. 47 is Donald J. Trump. Obviously, am I allowed to share who I voted for? Is that like a thing that we can do or no?
You can say whatever you want.
No, I can't say whatever I want because then Brian will edit me out.
He has edited you out.
Yeah,
freedom
of speech.
Say whatever
Brian.
you want.
I didn't vote for Kamala, that's for sure.
Okay,
but I might have voted for the independent guy. I don't know what his name is.
Justice Smollett.
Joel Stein.
Who's Joel Stein?
Jill Stein.
Who is that? Jillian.
Was one of the independent parties.
Yeah.
Oh, Jillian.
The Green Party.
Oh, the Green Party.
Yeah.
So this morning, sorry, Brian, probably have to cut all that out. So this morning, again, I want to just kind of review what happened last night. So Donald Trump won the Electoral College, as it seems like that right now. And he also won the popular vote, the first time a Republican candidate has done that since 2004. So he has done something that hasn't been done in 20 years now. He's won the popular vote. So he's Mr. Popular and Mr. Electoral College right now. So that's exciting for the country. I think the country is very, very united in this.
Well, it does seem like the country as a whole has made its voice heard that they want Trump.
Yeah.
And he stands for a lot of things. I think for pro-lifers, stands for a more pro-life stance than the pro-choice stance. I think for people that are concerned about the economy, it's more about the economy. Again, if you are on the whole personal thing where Trump is this or that, he's a fascist, Nazi dictator, he's a convicted criminal, he's a rapist, or something like that, and then I don't think you understand why people voted for him. And so it might be a confusing time for people like that.
And so I want to actually get to that, because the biggest argument, I guess, for against Donald Trump, and the biggest arguments that people have made regarding people that have voted for Donald Trump is, number one, why would you vote for a convicted felon over a woman? That's always the comparison, right? Because it's always, how come you didn't vote for the first woman president? How could you be so backwards? You would rather vote for a convicted criminal than vote for Kamala. That's the first one. The second one is, again, the woman one. They call Donald Mr. Glass Ceiling, something like that, because he's beaten Clinton and he beat Kamala now. And so he's not allowing women to ascend into the highest office.
Yeah.
So those are the biggest things. The woman,
he is what prevents women from getting
right. He is the preventer.
He's the
women.
problem. That's what people are saying. He's the problem.
Yeah, he limits women's progress.
Yeah.
Him alone. So I think that's the big issue, right? It's number one, how can you vote for a convicted felon? Number two, a convicted criminal. Number two, how could you not vote for the first woman president? What are you doing? Do you not want progress? These are kind of the accusations. So what are your responses to something like that?
It's always a little bit more complex. So, if you come at me with a very reductive, simplistic accusation against, let's say, a presidential candidate, even if it was to Harris, if it was reductive, if someone said, she's dumb, her IQ's like 88, how would you respond to that? And things like that. And so you could do one of two things, I suppose. You could dismiss it. So if you went to a Harris supporter, let's say you're a Harris supporter, okay, and then you said, well, I can't vote for Harris because she's as dumb as a brick. She has an IQ of 88.
I said that as a Harris supporter?
If someone said that to you,
okay,
you are a Harris supporter, how would you respond? Well, how do you think someone like that would respond?
I mean, I'll probably bring up the fact that Trump is a convicted criminal, and how can you not want the progress of women in politics?
Yeah, so it's always like a deflection, honestly. So the deflection that I'm talking about is when you bring up a weakness of a candidate, what you are trying to have them do is you need to, put the focus on that candidate. So the spotlight's on the candidate,
right?
And so it's something that we call in debate or any time of like if you argue with somebody, classic red herring. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Red herring is like, oh, look at that shiny object.
Little switcherooski,
and then you start looking at that. It's like, oh, that's the real argument. That's that's actually a red herring, because what I asked you about was Harris's incompetency and her very low IQ. So that's what I asked you about. But then if you go, well, I can't vote for, it doesn't matter because he's a convicted felon, it doesn't address the issue. So if someone comes up to you then, let's flip this back around. If someone comes up to you and says, how can you vote for a convicted felon? A lot of times what people do, though, is they don't deflect. So what I've seen is the opposite of people who have been defending Trump, is they don't actually deflect as much. I mean, you could say, well, if he's a convicted felon, then, Kamala is as dumb as a brick. I don't know, whatever it is. I don't see a lot of people do that. I see more people responding to that saying, well, there's something called lawfare that we experienced, that we see as a judicial process gone wrong, where it now has these clear biases that we want to correct by voting someone like this in. And so then you can start to talk about that. There are other things that people talk about if you're talking about a convicted felon, is when you look at the charges, and this is what we actually did in our podcast. We had I think a special podcast going through every single one of those charges. and saying how this is such a superficial level of charges that has been mounted together to make one large charge to say we can convict on like 36 counts of, you know, these tiny felonies of writing a check. Every time he wrote a check, then they would count it as one felony. So it would add up to like this large felony enough to. And so when you ask them, what was it for? So people would respond back and say, what was he convicted of? What were the charges? Especially if this person is, you know, well versed in the law or understands exactly what those counts were. I always want to ask, like, so what was it that he was convicted of? What were the you know, specific charges, and how do you think that really affects how people look at what they are now claiming as lawfare? Because my big concern, though, is now we are arming our judicial, you know, processes to go after their political opponents. If that's the case, I think that's a huge issue. It's a huge issue that Donald Trump has been convicted when the vast majority, or I would think the vast majority of people don't think that that's a big deal. Because again, if he won the popular vote, that's absolutely the case, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely the case. And so if that is the case, then why would you think that this is such a big deal when the bigger issues at stake are truly the ones that are moving people to vote, let's say, to the Republican ticket?
I think the issue with people's argument is, first of all, it always goes to those two, right? Then always goes to character. But Trump is a terrible person. How can you vote for Trump? He's a terrible person.
Yeah, I mean, we go back to, so for us in our podcast, we could go to the political side, which I just talked about, but I think for us it's more simple. And by simple, this time I do not mean reductive. By simple, I mean principle, going back to the foundational. And the foundational is something that, you know, one of the greats have said that I'd rather vote for a communist dog catcher than someone who's pro-choice. Mm-hmm. And so it is fundamentally, we judge a person's character by how they see life. So if you're saying this is a character issue, let's go back to the fundamental. How do we judge someone's character is how they see life. And so when they go into the highest seat in the land, the highest office in the land, how will they see life? Will they protect life? Who is more for protecting life? Who will have the sword that will protect life rather than kill life? And we saw without a doubt that Harris is someone that will actually put Christians in jail, because she has. She will put Christians in jail for protesting outside the Planned Parenthood. There's something called, what was the act that was the act that you can't, it was for churches and for FACE Act. It was called the FACE Act. And, you know, it was for, you know, outside abortion clinics with churches, religious, so you couldn't do this. But mainly the FACE Act, it was played out like that. But mainly the FACE Act is to put people who protest outside of abortion clinics in jail. So we saw a ton of people. Even last year, we saw this one case where a judge put this elderly woman in jail, in prison, for praying and protesting outside of an abortion clinic, where they are routinely murdering, dismembering, killing babies. And so when you have an administration like that, when you have a record that Harris had for doing that while she was in California, and yes, while she was in office as vice president, she was the only elected executive, so either president or vice president, to visit a Planned Parenthood. That's crazy. So her whole platform is on killing babies. And when you asked her on that interview that I talked about last week about how you would, you know, what about exceptions? When they asked her about exceptions, would you make any exceptions? It's like, how can you make it? So her argument is, how can you make exceptions when it comes to a woman's health care or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
And so this person is completely pro-choice. I don't know how many babies she's murdered in her past life, We don't know any of that. But what we do know is that she is all for murdering babies or allowing women to murder babies. And this is something that Christians cannot stand for. So for us, in the people that are listening to this podcast, we can't stand for someone that is so off the deep end when it comes to pro-choice and pro-life that they wouldn't even have us in the same room to have a conversation. They'd rather put us in jail. That's not even, let's have a debate anymore. I'm just going to put you in jail. That's where we are when it comes to Kamala Harris. So how can you vote for someone like that? How can you honestly, with a Christian conscience, understanding that the least of these include, if not, they are absolutely the babies in the womb. They are the most vulnerable, the ones that need our protection the most.
Yeah.
They need our support the most. If we're going to pour in resources and finances and we need to make laws regarding this, it should be to protect them. It should be to protect the kids, those babies there. How can you, in all honesty, cast a vote for a woman who won't even have you, not at the table, but who will now put you in jail for believing what you believe, saying there's no exception? And if you're a doctor or if you're a medical worker, then, and who says, with my religious convictions, I can't do this. I can't allow for this to happen. Then what? You're going to take our license away? You're going to put us in jail now? Because that was definitely on the table when it came to Kamala Harris. And that's something that I don't think any Christian with that religious conviction could ever vote for.
So I think one of the most frustrating things that people say is what we were talking about is this character issue. But Trump is a terrible person. It's like, okay, do you know Kamala Harris? Like, are you Lindsay Davis? Do you know who Kamala Harris is? Like, are you guys tight like that? Like, how do you know? How do you know she's not a terrible person? How do you know? And I think people try to think, okay, well, you know what? Kamala might be endorsing or supporting abortion, but she's not really like that. Democrats aren't really like that. Like, they just did that to get into office. It's like, bro, what are you talking about?
Yeah, there's no evidence to show that.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Do you know her?
We have nothing that shows that this person is actually empathetic or sympathetic to anybody's causes. What we saw, so the people that voted for Trump saw that she was either an empty shell or she was sinister, meaning she was able to hide her real personality from the people all the way up until now. That wouldn't have been the case, I suppose, if she was actually primaried. But we know that wasn't the case after the primary. After the first debate, we saw Joe Biden get ousted.
Yeah.
And then she was campaigning for like 100 days or something like that. How does anybody get to know a person like that? And while she was in office, she did everything contrary to Christian principles. So while she was in office as VP, she did everything contrary to Christian principles. She went to the border. She didn't solidify the border. She didn't protect the people. That's what people saw. Whether you want to argue about that or not, because, she wasn't really the border czar. And it's like, well, we have receipts where everybody called her the border czar. And so when you go back to that, you're like, all right, now we'll go back into the whole, political arguing back and forth. What I wanted to get in this podcast to make it very clear to our listeners is we could talk about surface level stuff, secondary, tertiary items. They are still important. I'm not saying they're not important, but what we want to get to is the primary stuff. What is foundational to a person's character is what you think about life, how you look at a baby, how you look at an innocent baby in a mother's womb, regardless of circumstances surrounding conception. That baby is a life unto its own. What do you think about when you look at that baby? And with your answer, I can tell you what your fundamental position on life is.
But what if someone told you, well, you don't know what Trump thinks fundamentally, right? Because it's the same argument, right? We could say, well, Trump had this platform so that he could get the Christian vote, so that he can get the conservative vote. You don't really know Trump. He's a bad guy. So
that is an argument that people are saying, which is astounding because it's flabbergasting. Because when he was in office, he did those things.
Yep.
When he was in office, he put 3 SCOTUSes that were not for abortion, that were pro-life, that understood that the sanctity of life is protected in the Constitution and it goes to babies.
They reversed
And
Roe v. Wade.
They did reverse Roe v. Wade, which is something that we are seeing that now states across the country now are, voting for amendments to allow for abortion.
Yep.
I believe
it failed in Florida, I think.
Florida is the only place.
Meatball
so
wrong.
now we're talking about abortion across the states, places even like in Missouri. These are guys that put in Josh Hawley. They're like very staunch conservative Republicans, but they are voting for the right in their constitution, the right to kill their babies. And like I said last time, it comes from sexual immorality. The only reason why you want to kill a baby is because you have a sexually immoral society. We talked about Leviticus, how it goes to all the sexual immoral acts, and then it says, you better not give your babies to Moloch. Then you'll have the ultimate judgment. If you don't understand who Moloch is, or if you don't know, again, just as a reminder, this is the idol that the ancient world devoted their babies to kill him, because maybe they didn't have the technology to kill them inside the womb, but once they're outside the womb, they will kill these babies by putting it into the hands of a burning statue while the drums beat, so that it beats so loud so that the father couldn't hear the cries of the baby, and then the father couldn't go save the baby.
Yeah.
You know what they did? It wasn't in New York City that the woman got together and started doing the drums. They started playing the drums. If we're going to edit this and you have time, put that video in where you saw this women's march, pro-choice march, where all these women came and started beating the drums so that they could kill their babies. It's insane because 2,000 years later, people are still doing this. People are still beating the drums so that they could kill their babies. So Moloch is still real. It's alive. Not that Moloch is an entity, but it's something that people, like a real life entity, but it's something that people still worship and bring their offerings to. They bring their dead baby carcasses to bow down before this idol, this monstrosity, this aberration of what is true, what is good and beautiful.
Yeah.
And so people are still doing that today. Florida is the only state right now that had Amendment 4 not passed. So they voted no on Amendment 4. So they had two amendments up for vote. Amendment 3, which was for marijuana. Amendment 4, which was for abortion, all the way up until birth. And so all the way up until birth, and they voted no on it. But the detail that you should understand is, even though Florida had a big win, they still had a majority. So the majority of people voted to abort their babies up until the ninth month in Florida. I think the vote was like 57%, but they needed 60% to pass the measure. And so they didn't get to 60%, but they still had a majority. That means a majority of people in Florida voting want to kill their babies. This is a very minority stance that we are taking in the United States to say you cannot kill your baby. So the majority of the United States, now we are seeing, want to kill their baby. This is what Harris ran on, and this is what we do not want as a Christian. So we don't want a no holds bar. Anybody can, anytime, any for any reason, abort their baby. This is not what we want in our country. And so as a Christian, you cannot, with a clear conscience, vote for someone that stands for the things that she has said that she stands for.
So I think a lot of people treat this like they treat fantasy football. And the reason why I bring this up is because when you do a fantasy football draft, everyone thinks that they have insider information. Everyone thinks that their information is this new. Oh, this quarterback likes throwing to that receiver. And so, this is like a little insider thing. Like, bro, no, you don't know that kind of stuff. And so people think, Kamala might have, done this. Her campaign was around this. Her platform was this, but she actually doesn't really believe that. Democrats aren't really, really like that. So, okay, well, how do you know that? right? And they say, oh, but Republicans, they platformed on this. They, they say that they love babies, but Trump's the type of person that would get someone pregnant and abort the baby. How do you know that, bro? Like, how do you know Trump? How do you know Kamala? How do you know them? Right? How the general public can know them is through their policies and what they've campaigned on and what they're going to enact and what they have enacted prior. Kamala has supported abortions throughout these last 4 years. We have to remember Kamala is in office right now as vice president. She's in office right now. Trump did the reverse of that. And so people don't really think about the past or the platform or what people are actually, or what these candidates are actually proposing and saying that they'll do. They think they have this insider information and therefore they weigh the character based on their quote unquote insider information. You don't know these people. You don't know Kamala like that. You don't know Trump like that. I do though. That's why I voted Trump.
In Proverbs, maybe you could look this up. It's God who steers the king's heart like he would a stream. And so those are things that we get to understand, where when Trump first became president, we actually had no idea what he might do. But while he was president during his tenure, he really did uphold Christian causes. But why were Christians so mad? Why, if you're a Christian, why were you so mad during Trump's tenure? And wasn't it because you had been convinced that his character was bankrupt? Yeah. Why were you convinced? Because you consumed media that told you otherwise. That told you that. They told you, like, look at him tweet all the time and look at his, bombastic nature and personality, his unpredictable, things of that, all that stuff. So you consume that. So you constantly consume media like that. And then you just can't take it anymore. This person is Hitler 2.0. Yeah. And so if you think he's Hitler 2.0, then everything else is like angels and marshmallows. I don't know. Everything else is like roses because this person is Hitler. So if you've been convinced of that, I don't think it's any surprise that you're shocked that other people don't have your view.
Yeah.
And so we talked about TDS here, Trump derangement syndrome. Some people do have a serious case of TDS. I was talking with someone and I mentioned what TDS was, and this person just lost it.
They TDS'd you.
They lost it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just explaining what TDS is.
Yeah.
It's like you can't see anything other than Orange Man bad. So everyone else good. If you don't understand what TDS is, maybe you have a little TDS. But if you're speaking to someone with TDS, don't mention TDS. This is what I found. Otherwise, they just shut down all conversation.
Yeah.
And number two, if you're speaking with someone that has TDS, that means you have to take like 20 steps back when you are talking with this person, because this person is so far on the other side that regular conversation like you and I have a conversation won't work. And so that's something that really did happen. And I have my theories on this. I have a lot of theories that we don't talk about here, which I just don't think is related. I just want to give you the principal concepts here.
Yeah.
But these are all social experiments that are being done by people that are in power. If you look at all the news media agencies, 9 people own them all. You know what I mean? Mm. And so 9 people, we are being affected by what 9 people essentially think. And those are things that people have woken up to. And that's why the number one news agency now is, as you know, where people get their news.
Instagram.
No, it's X.
Oh, X.
Yeah.
X is
formerly Twitter. That's where the number one, that's where most people are now getting their news. Because of that, I believe this election turned out the way it did, because people are saying, I don't want to get my news from CNN, Fox, and NBC, MSNBC. Yeah. Is there any other media agency that I can turn to? And people have been looking to X to find some information that some agencies might not be reporting. And that's exactly what we saw. We saw all these things happen, and media agencies are not reporting on it. Just like what you talked about with Kamala Phonegate, media agencies are not reporting on it, but you saw it on X. You saw it on X, and then people on X bring it to other social media platforms like YouTube or Instagram or these other places, but they first see it on X. I don't know if you want to explain what the Phonegate was.
Kamala was, I think, was at her headquarters, her election day headquarters. She was there, and in the video, she gets on the phone, and you can see her saying, "Oh, you did? Thank you so much for that." Something like that. And then she removes the phone from her face, and she holds it up, and it's her camera. Her camera is on. Her camera is on, and then I think she puts it back to her face as if she's on the phone. Everyone can see that she is not on the phone. She is lying. And so people say, well, you know what? You could be on the phone and the camera at the same time. Okay, this is very, very true. You zoom in on the picture. Bang, 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 bang. Zoom in. You don't see the green, or is it green dot on the top left corner. Everyone that has an iPhone knows that if you are on the phone and you are on a different app, you have that little green dot nowhere to be found. She was not on the phone.
I mean, if you have not been consuming news outside of the three that I talked about, or reading the New York Times and things like that, this is not new for Kamala. Like
no.
she posed for a bunch of pictures. She had like her earbuds in without it being connected to the phone, and so there was a bunch of pictures that she just posed to. And this is why I'm saying, for a lot of people, this is including myself. Now I'm speaking for myself. When you see the things that she's been doing, she's just an empty shell. She just poses for things. She has no core. She's like what we talked about, actors, but she's just a bad actor. There's some good actors out there who convinced us of a lot of things. And so she's just a bad actor. By the way, I suppose now celebrity endorsements don't mean jack. So you might be happy about that.
I mean,
they didn't move the needle enough.
I like Joe Rogan though. But then someone could respond to you, Pastor Eugene, and be like, you know what, Pastor Eugene, I get it that she did this, but Trump has done so much worse. Are you saying that this one little phone gate thing is that much worse than what Trump has done? He's done so much worse.
Yeah. I mean, I always ask for specifics. And then,
Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, Stormy Daniels. I asked for specifics of what happened with then, there's Michael Cohen, Michael Avenatti. There's all these other lawyers that came up, and then they're just now disbarred. And so these are guys that would bring stuff against Trump, and what people found was these guys are just full of it. It's just a bunch of lies. And so these things are old. They're old news. They're not in, like, we know Trump. Like, people who've been looking at Trump, they know him. So if you're asking, how can people vote for him? People know. People know what they're getting. And so they're like, I think what I'm getting is good, though. And so they looked at the economy. They looked at, his support with evangelicals in general. They looked at just the promises that he would say that he would carry out. So I think people are really looking forward to, let's say, the promises that he's made during his campaign trail were things like no tax on tips. J.D. Vance talked about a child credit on taxes, on your income tax for, I think, $5,000. And then Kamala came back later, said she wanted to give $6,000. But J.D. Vance was talking about that. There was even mention of Trump looking to see if he can abolish the income tax. I mean, that would be insane. I think that alone, would make his presidential tenure historic, to get rid of the income tax. There was talk about him getting rid of the Board of Ed.
Oh, yeah. Or no, the DOE, right?
Yeah, Department of Education, rather. So if he gets rid of the Department of Education, this is something Ronald Reagan could not do once Jimmy Carter put it in. And once Jimmy Carter put it in, people have been trying to get rid of it, but they couldn't. And so he came out on the trail and said, you know what, I'm going to try to get rid of it. If he does the things that he has promised, even half of it, his presidential tenure will truly be historic, especially if you're a conservative. And so if you're talking to a Christian, these are conservative values. And you're coming to me with, I don't know what you're coming to me with. Honestly, I just don't understand what you're coming to me with. And if I talk to you about that, you could say, you know, oh, but this person is a bad, you know, he was just a mean guy. Okay, I mean, that's fine. And then, you know, I was talking with someone. And I talked to him about one of the key things that really, really made me upset and really sad for our country was the Afghanistan pullout. This is not something that we don't talk about, but it was probably the worst thing any president has ever done, not just in my lifetime, but maybe in all of history, I'm not sure, to leave hundreds and thousands of your own citizens to fend for themselves to get out of that country, to leave tens of thousands, perhaps 100,000 allies, people that have supported you over the years, the people that have translated for you, the people that have given you like shelter, support, and to leave them out so that the Taliban could just kill them wantonly. Christians fleeing for their lives because they are being dragged out into the streets and being beheaded, tortured, killed, raped. That might be the worst thing that I've ever seen. No one's talking about that.
I think there was a moment on the Joe Rogan podcast where Donald Trump actually talks about that. And during one of his campaigns, he brings up a 5-year-old. And he says, if you were president and you were pulling out of a country, what would you take out? Everything else or the soldiers? And the 5-year-old knew that you would take out everything else before you pull all the soldiers. It's a terrible thing.
Because now this is getting to what we understand as character. Kamala, Joe Biden, if they really cared about the people, they would have done everything they could to save our citizens from that kind of horror that they saw and they experienced in Afghanistan before they pulled out the soldiers, before they left all the equipment, billions and billions of dollars of equipment there. You know what this person said to me? It's like, well, I mean, what about January 6th? And I'm like, what? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, that's tough.
And so it's not just a red herring. This is like red whale. It's like, look at that. Yeah. And so so when we talk to someone with TDS, there's no conversation to be had. And so that's what I'm saying. A lot of times for us, we just have to pull it back a lot. It's like for me, that was a pivotal moment for me understanding what this administration will be about. This administration will not be about at all, because this person Joe Biden ran on empathy. I'm going to be an empathetic president. You could relate to me. First of all, I think that's garbage. I won't get into that. That's just garbage. If you want an empathetic president, you vote for your counselor, vote for your psychiatrist. But that's not what I want. I want an executive. I want someone that can do the things that he or she needs to do to keep our country safe and to promote good. That's why the government has the sword, to promote good and to protect it from intruders or people that would threaten the lives of our citizens. That's what I want. I want an executive. I don't care if you're empathetic to my needs. I don't think that does anything. And then people are like, well, if they're empathetic, they'll put policies that'll help you. Nothing happened though. And so that was a pretty pivotal moment for me to understand this person is not only not empathetic, this person is the opposite. This person is so narcissistic that they will put themselves, their own legacy, above everything else, including thousands of United States citizens, hundreds, maybe 1,000 of United States citizens, put them in harm's way, have them killed. We had people that were U.S. citizens in Afghanistan calling, begging the embassy and the administration to save them, saying, please, I'm in hiding. I don't know what I could do. Please send somebody, send some help. Please don't leave me here stranded.
People were clinging to the wheels of the airplane. Do you remember that?
And they died.
And they died as the airplane was taking off.
No, when the airplane landed, there were people inside the wheel well that were frozen to death because they just died up in the wheel. They would rather take their chance
Yep.
Going up into
Yep.
that airplane that was leaving,
Yep.
even though they knew they'd probably die,
Yep.
rather than stay in Afghanistan. That for me was a pivotal moment. No one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about why they didn't, secure one of the most, the biggest airport in Afghanistan. Why they did what they did in Kabul. Why they, now we have Senate hearings. We understand, like, we had information on the bomber, and they were waiting. The sniper was waiting to get rid of the guy. They're like, there's this guy. He looks like he's no good. We have good reason to suspect that he's going to come, and he may even be a bomber. And he waited for top down to get rid of him.
Yep.
And he never got it. And he killed
Sure enough,
13 U.S. soldiers. Those are things that were not reported when I believe that should have been reported constantly. Every day that should have come out. Every day we should have been talking about how we could get our people back home. Every day we should have been saying, these are the numbers. But when we asked the administration, they would always respond with, we don't know the exact numbers. How in the world can you call yourself a competent administration if you don't know the numbers of your citizens that are in? You can't even give us a broad number. It's like, we can't give you a broad number. Like, what is going on here? And so when people talk to me about empathy or sympathy, these are the things that I think about. It's like, are you talking about how we left so many of our citizens to die, our allies, the people that have helped us to get murdered in a country that we had control over, that had relative stability? I don't understand. And so you explain that to me. Because there was already an exit plan. There was already an exit plan that under Trump that we would have done a slow evac where we would continue to stabilize as much as we can and then pull out completely. That wasn't followed because, I don't know. Now, I mean, it's pretty evident that Joe Biden wanted for his legacy in the 20th year of the Afghan war, right before 9/11, he could say, I pulled out of Afghanistan. He doesn't even talk about that anymore. But that's the legacy he wanted. He doesn't talk about it because it was so bad. It was so bad that he can't even talk about that. That's not a win for his legacy. And so when we're talking about, like, going to, I don't know, people's personality, their character, I'm like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about what they have executed as an executive? Are you talking about what they've accomplished? Then let's talk about that. Let's talk about what Kamala actually did when she was in power as VP, as AG, what she actually did, who she actually put in jail. Let's talk about Joe Biden, what he actually did.
Right.
And then let's talk about Trump, what he actually did. Why are we talking about character if we're not talking about what he actually did? So if I'm talking about you, about character, I'm not just talking about how you look or what your face is. Well, this guy has a nice face. He has a kind face. I want to vote for him. That's not why I vote for Sam. I vote for Sam by saying, what did you actually do? What did you do? So now that you're an elder-elect, people voted for you. Are they saying, I like his face, that's why they vote for you? Or is it what you actually did the last 6 whatever years that you were here?
Right.
And so they look at what you actually did, and then they're like, oh, you know what? We can't affirm his call to be an elder in our church. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do in our church. Why is that so different from the presidential race when we're looking at elected officials in our country? What did you actually do? And so those are things that we want to talk about. And if you're saying this guy is bankrupted character because of his rhetoric, yeah, obviously. Obviously, we don't like sometimes the rhetoric of politicians. I don't like the rhetoric of Biden, of Harris, and sometimes of Trump as well. And that's fine. We could get to that. But when we get to the core of it, what did you actually do?
Yeah.
That's my question. And so if you're going to tail it back, I think for most people that listen to this podcast, I think they have friends like I do who have some level of TDS. And so they just can't believe. So I open my Instagram. They're like, they're flabbergasted that he could not only win the electoral college, but he could win the popular vote. And so how do we talk to people like that? You know,
Yeah.
Are they going to be so mad that they're going to then march again? You know, like that women's march that we saw, which was such a pathetic march. It was so pathetic. They didn't like any pro-lifers march along with them. They were such a pathetic excuse for a women's march. And so is that what's going to happen? So how do you talk to people like that? And so for a Christian, I think we just want to get our basics down. We want to get our principles in. We want to talk about what God has taught us in the Word. And so you can continue to talk about that. We could definitely have a back and forth on what we think the proper rhetoric of an elected official is.
Yeah.
I think that's a great conversation for me to have. And I think we would have a lot in common, to be honest. But you can't say this person's rhetoric is bad and this other person's is glowingly good. I don't know where you even get that from. Where do you get that from?
Yeah. So I guess my question is, how do we minister to our friends, our family members that may be thinking of these three big things? I think the three big things that we talked about on this podcast so far is Trump's evil character, quote unquote. The fact that we didn't vote for, or you didn't vote for a woman president, the first ever woman president if you voted for Trump. The third, you voted for a convicted criminal. How do we look at the heart of somebody that's saying these things? How do we minister to them? And I think that's my second to last question. And my last question would be, how do we pray now that Trump has been, or it seems like he will be elected?
Yeah, that's what I really wanted to get to. But to answer that first part of your question, I would say that if you really want to respond to this person's claim, saying this is about character, this is about, this person being a convicted felon. I forgot what was the second one?
A woman.
How can you not vote for the woman?
Right.
You can say, well, some of these issues you also agree are important. There are more superseding, more primary foundational issues that you believe.
Yeah.
So you could say above the convicted felon thing, above voting in a woman, above, this person's character.
Right.
These are the main things that we are looking at. And so I would say always go to what is primary, foundation, something that we talk about. I think then you could have an easy conversation, or at least defend your position.
Right.
If this person is looking for a debate, then you could easily defend your position. I could go on way further, but I think I would lose the person if we went to the woman thing. It's like, you want to come to me with DEI, I could just send you to our DEI specialist, Brian, and he can handle that. Because it's like DEI. If you come at me with the woman thing, I don't even know if that's like something that would make me vote for someone because they're a woman.
Yeah,
it's like voting for someone because they're black, or voting for someone because they're Korean. Yeah. That is a terrible reason to vote for someone. In our New Jersey Senate race, I believe Andy Kim is going to take it.
Drew.
And a lot of people voted for Andy Kim because he's Korean.
Right.
We don't vote like that. As a Christian, we just don't vote like that.
No.
That's what I'm saying. As people here who have Christian convictions in our church, in our podcast, we don't vote for someone because they're Korean. We don't vote for someone because they're black. We don't vote for someone because they're a woman. Does that make sense?
You would vote for somebody because they're Christian, though. So what's the difference?
That's a big difference. That's a big difference. This is about what is at the core of their person. Christian is their ultimate identity.
Right.
If you're saying black is your ultimate identity, I don't even know what that means.
That's wrong.
If you're saying Korean is your ultimate identity, I don't know what that means, because
like
are you
kimchi.
saying that Korean culture is why you voted for Andy Kim? How do you know he has Korean culture? Just because he has a last name? How do you know he stands for the Korean values that you have?
Right.
You don't know that. In fact, I know for a fact that he doesn't, that he is pro-choice. So there you go. The dude's not really Korean then, if you think that Korean values mean conservative social values, because that's not a conservative social value. So you just voted for him because of his skin color, because of his last name. That's a bad reason to vote.
Isn't that racism?
Reverse racism is what we call it. Yeah. And so if you're saying woman is one of your top issues, then I would just send Brian to you. I don't know what else to do.
I feel like Brian is like he's in the armory, like he's preparing, he's getting ready. And anytime something CRT or DEI comes out, like he's like
He's the big gun.
He's
the
gonna
cannon.
go. He's gonna go.
We
He's
bring the
big
cannon
boy.
out when we need to demolish like a large swath of things.
And we just
so
say
bring
like,
the cannon out, we launch the cannon.
yeah, like he's just like,
And so
getting ready to go. He's like a
yeah,
little
if you come up
Porsche
to me with
911
this
turbo.
DEI stuff, so I think it's one of those things where you're like, well, while I think a lot of people thought that it would be nice to have a woman president, wouldn't you want a good woman president?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So a lot of times so I have egalitarian friends. I worked in an egalitarian church. And the argument that I always made was if you're going to, and this did not buy me win some points, by the way, but this is the argument I made like 10 years ago. If you truly are an egalitarian church and you want women in your leadership, don't you want capable women? Because you need to be capable to be an effective leader.
Yep.
Just being a woman would actually hinder you from progress that you're seeking.
Yep.
If you want a woman, leader, make sure she's amazing. Make sure she's better than any man then. Make sure she's like the Deborah that you think Deborah is. But if you're just celebrating because she's a woman, if you're just celebrating because he's black or he's Korean or, she's Indian, I don't know, whatever the case is, then I believe you've lost the plot. You are not progressing to a greater nation, a greater church, a better place. You are actually making it a shell of nothingness. There's nothing in the core. It's just a shell. All we care now is about the outside.
Yep.
You are not progressive anymore. You are just translucent. You're just transparent. You're nothing. And so those are things that I have said in the past. It did not buy me win some points though. The woman that I said this to did not really appreciate it, but
That's tough.
well, they were pastors serving with me at the time, and I said, if you really think that this is the case, then you better be like the most spectacular, or you better put up the most spectacular woman out there,
Right.
Otherwise, you are losing the cause that you think you're fighting for. I didn't, back then I was egalitarian, so I was actually just telling him truth. If you truly are an egalitarian society, it's not just about shell. It's not just about cover. You really want someone who has a good core. And you're saying that women can also have a strong executive core. If you're saying that, then put someone with a strong executive core in there. And Kamala is not it.
No.
Obviously, she's not it.
No.
So why are you so upset about a woman when she's just an empty shell? All she has is the cover. She has nothing inside. And so that's what, not just I think, that's what a majority of the people think. And so these are things that we continue to want to talk about. But, that's if you have a long conversation. And if they still want to talk to you at this point. I found that a lot of people don't want to talk to you. They just want to get their talking points in and then out so that they can feel good about themselves. It's like, I had these conservative friends and I told them what's up. I gave them my 3 points. So I feel like a lot of people are like that. So, okay, so it's not really a conversation. I'll listen to the points. And I'll just say my points then. I'll give them my points and say these are the deeper issues for me. The deepest issue is the value of life, the sanctity of life, how you treat life, how you treat your citizens abroad and inside the country. And that's what I would see as the ultimate principal value that I can judge the character of, an elected official on.
So is there a place so like you said, I think, a lot of people, I think these days just want to get their 3 points across, Kamala included, just want to get their 3 points across and bounce. But I think maybe, people on the left could accuse us of that as well, right? Is there anywhere that we can go to be better informed, to be better prepared, to know what's going on, to know the different policies, to know the different arguments? Where can we go for that kind of information?
Yeah, this is a good reminder that I want to give to our listeners of the podcast. Listen to long form. This is what this podcast is. This podcast is a long form answer to a lot of things that we could just take time and sit down and hash out, tweeze out the details.
Yeah.
You could ask me further questions about, well, what about this? What about that? What about this dimension, that dimension? So listen to long form interviews, listen to long form speeches. Don't just listen to a stump speech or a campaign speech. That's not long form. And this is why, let's say, a 60-minute interview is important without the redacted edits and like all that stuff that we saw that they did for
CBS.
Yeah, for Camelot, where they
Yeah.
would put it down to what, like 20-something minutes or something like that. But a long-form interview. Joe Rogan does that spectacularly.
Yep.
And so when he gets guests over, he can really go down and to this is what he says. I just want to get to know this person. And so they think 3 hours is better than 1 hour. But continuous 1+ hour stuff is good. And so people in our church, they know me. So if you've grown up with me, you know my character, you know who I am, because you spent so much time with me. That's what people need to know in the campaign trail for 1.5, 2 years. When they're on the campaign trail, what they're trying to show the people is this is the kind of person I am.
Yeah.
With Kamala, they couldn't do it, so they need to do it with the 3.5 years she was VP, with the time that she was AG in California. And so they made their decision on that. And when she had the 100 days, she didn't show us who she was. It was just all edited, with that TikTok filter. That's what it is, basically. We just saw Kamala through a TikTok filter, and then you're like, I actually don't know what she looks like because all I saw her was through a filter. And you know what? I don't want to vote for someone like that.
But AOC can run a mean pick six.
Yeah, AOC can run a mean pick six.
At least that's what Tim Walz said. So
yeah, and he was a
former
coach.
football coach.
Yeah, for sure he coached football. I don't know where, like in real life, maybe in his mind, for sure he coached football.
That one was really, really tough. So I mean, just to give context, I just wanted to just add that in there. I don't know why I just thought about that.
That's fine. This is just a conversation today.
But correct me if I'm wrong. So I think AOC has a live stream. I think it's on Twitch.
Yeah,
Twitch.
She has a Twitch.
And
Twitch.
she was streaming with Tim Walz, right? Who was the vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party and self-acclaimed former football coach. And he said that AOC can run a mean pick six. Were they playing Madden or something? Is that what the context was?
They were on a live Twitch stream.
Yep.
And they were supposedly playing Madden.
Which
and
I think is
then
great.
Tim Walz tweeted out or X'd out, AOC can run a mean pick six.
I don't think we need to explain any further of anything because anyone that has seen 15 minutes of football, like just watched it, maybe just even walked by the TV, can know why that's crazy. So I don't think we even have to explain anything.
I don't know. I don't know who they're trying to win over with stuff like that. Who are they winning over?
Not me. So I don't know.
It's like saying AOC can bench press 190 pounds. And you're like, what? Who benches 190 pounds? Who says that? It's like, I can bench 190 pounds. It's like, what? Who says that?
It could be like a PR, like Bryant is around there, I think. But it could be a PR. David Keems is around there.
Yeah, so you can
90.
run a mean pick six, right?
Yeah, I run a nasty pick six.
Yeah.
But I thought that was kind of interesting. Sorry to take us off topic there. But I guess the most important question that I'll ask today is, now how do we pray, right? So we have been waiting for this result, and it's most likely the result that we have been hoping for, and at least the result that I voted for. And now what, right? Because we know that Trump is not the savior of the world. We know that's not the case. We know that he's not Jesus. We know that. Actually, a lot of people think he's the Antichrist, but that's another story. How do we pray for President Trump now? How do we pray for this country? What is our next step?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think no matter what the outcome of the elections were last night, today, what we would have recorded is Jesus is king.
Yep.
Blank is president. That's what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So now that we kind of pretty much know who the president-elect is, we can say Jesus is king, Trump is president.
Yeah.
Trump is under Jesus' sovereignty, his authority. And what we do is we pray that Trump follow what Jesus has taught us, what the Word says, the values that we have been taught in the Word, the values that we uphold as Christians, the sanctity of life, to make sure that the sword is there to protect us. All this other economic stuff is great, I think. But I think the ultimate thing is life. And so I hope that, this is the beginning of the Christians' fight to protect babies in the womb. And, if this presidency will not stop you from continuing to do that, rather. And so I hope that that's the case. So when we're praying, we continue to pray for what is the most foundational things in our understanding as a society, as a nation to keep. And number two, it's if we're going to understand unity, it's to understand that even if we have other people that disagree with us and other people that even have TDS, they are not the enemy. We should be patient with them. We should continue to see if they want to have conversation with us because, who knows, they might just want to cut us off.
Yeah.
And say, I don't want to have dinner with you. I'm not going to be with you in any more family gatherings because you voted for this dictator.
Right.
I mean, if that's the case, what can you do? But, you just want to continue to have conversations with them saying, look, I can guarantee you that what you are fearing will not be the case because what I believe is that you have been, the Democratic ticket has been fear-mongering this whole time. So they weren't running a platform on joy, like they said. They were running a platform on fear. And so they were saying, you better be scared, scared, scared. And so people are now scared. How do we minister to people that are scared? You continue to minister to them by showing them what's ultimate. Ultimate is Jesus is King, Jesus is Lord. Follow Jesus. And don't put your hope ultimately in one presidential candidate or an elected official. While some may be better than others, we know that we are safe. Even if this nation crumbled, even if this nation passes away, the Word of God stands forever.
Yep.
And you are standing on the Word of God. And so if that's the case, then continue to do so, my brother or my sister. We can still pray together. We can still enjoy worship together. We can still say, we are, united in Christ together. Let's say they're not a Christian and they're just an American citizen. Being an American citizen is still above. It supersedes the candidate that we voted for because you're an American citizen, you could vote for either the Democrat ticket or the Republican ticket. So you can be thankful that we still have a democratic process in place and that has been fulfilled. So you can be happy about that. And we can still be happy that we live in the greatest country of all time. This is the greatest country in the world. And we could be happy that we're citizens of it. And now that Trump is president, people can be more free to wear their MAGA hats, their Trump socks, and they don't have to lie about. I was jumped by a bunch of people who screamed, "This is MAGA country," and put a MAGA hat on you.
America is top 2, and we ain't number 2. Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. And we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Again, I think this is a topic that would benefit from us talking about it. And
I actually wanted to finish off by saying we should pray for the president-elect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now that he is president-elect, we should be praying for him. Whether you voted for him or not, you should be praying for him. This is what we did with Biden. This is what we would have done with Harris. And we have to do with Trump.
Yep.
And so continue to pray for the president-elect now, that there will be a smooth transition of power, and that once he comes into power, that he will be able to execute the things that he promised on. And I believe all the promises that he had made during his campaign trail, they were all good, to be honest. They were all good. Even up to the little ones like no tax on tips. I mean, it's great. No tax anywhere would be super for me.
Yeah.
I think taxes are evil. I think they're from the devil. But, that's what it is.
I think that's a different...
That's a different topic for another day. No, but, we want to protect life. You want to continue to fight for life. And let's pray that the president has a continuous change of heart to do that. And that, he will appoint and put people near him those that love life,
Yeah.
that will protect life.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. And it's like you said, it's a call for us Christians to pray. And I think Alan Moeller put it best this morning. He released a podcast episode this morning, but our work is just beginning, and we need to continue to passionately and diligently pray for this country and for its leader, Mr. 47. With that being said, we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week. Oh yeah, join us next week. Yeah, as we continue on discussing the church, but we will keep our eyes on this election. We know that Kamala actually hasn't made a statement yet, and so we'll see what happens with during the rest of this week, and then we'll be able to talk about it next week. So stay tuned for that. Did I say we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast? Join us next week. Did I say that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you really want to do is start hooting and hollering that DJT won. You're so happy, dude.
I'm eating Taco Bell today.
If you don't know, that's a crazy thing. That's how happy Sam is. That's a crazy thing that he's eating Taco Bell. He would rather suffer for the next 3 days in the bathroom.
Yeah, my stomach has not been kind
and then
to me,
not celebrate DJT's victory.
I'm eating cookies today. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith.
Peace.
Peace.